Today's spoiler video is brought to you by Card Kingdom. Use the link below to pre-order your cards today. Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another daily dose of Modern Horizon spoilers. And oh my goodness, they actually did it. Today is crazy. We got our land cycle and it is insane. It's not what maybe some people were predicting, but I am super excited for the land cycle that is coming in Modern Horizons, and we got other cards to talk about too, which means we should probably jump right into it and start talking about these super sweet new cards. Before we do, a quick reminder, if you haven't already, it would be so helpful of you if you could take a second, click that subscribe button down at the bottom of your screen. It's a great way to support the channel and the site for free. So let's talk some Modern Horizon spoilers, starting with Horizon Canopy. Horizon Canopy is not in Modern Horizons, but you might know this card. Horizon Canopy is actually one of the single most played lands in the Modern format. It is the 5th most played land, I think, which means it actually sees roughly the same amount of play as the fetch lands, which are known as the best lands in Modern. Well, with Modern Horizons, we learned our land cycle, and it is an entire cycle of Horizon Canopies. Enemy-colored Horizon Canopies, Sunbait Canyon and Boros, Nurturing Peat Land for Golgari, Waterlogged Grove for Simic, and also the white-black one, Orzhov Link Clearing, Fiery Islet for Izzet, which means now we have 6 different colored versions of Horizon Canopy, still missing the rest of the allied versions, but this is absolutely absurd. So there was speculation maybe we'd get snow duels in the set, or who knows what it would be, but this land cycle is about as exciting as it can get as far as a new land cycle. Like, really, you can't do much better than this as far as a modern playable land cycle. If you look at Horizon Canopy, that card is played in a ton of different decks. It's played in Selesnya decks because it's green-white, but it's also played in decks that are like mono-white, because being able to, in the late game, turn your land into another card that's hopefully not a land and does something relevant is a really huge deal. So while I think the play of Horizon Canopy itself will probably come down a little bit because now we actually have other options for other colors, I expect that this land cycle is going to quickly jump into the fetch land, shock land pantheon of lands that will be played in Modern. Like, it's hard to overstate what a huge deal this is, because really one of the ways a lot of decks lose, especially aggro decks lose, is because they flood out. And if you are playing some number of lands that can sacrifice themselves to draw another card, you have your mana in the early game, and then you don't really have to worry as much about flooding out because you can always turn these lands into another card. So these lands are going to be great in Commander. They're going to be great in Modern. They're going to see you play in Legacy. Just an awesome land cycle. So a little weird that they don't have anything to do with snow, and we've seen this snow theme, so I'm not sure how we turn on like our Snow Matters cards in Limited or whatever, but really, this land cycle is thrilling, exciting, insane, awesome for Modern, good to see a ton of play. Hopefully they're not super expensive, we'll see. Hopefully there's enough supply of this set that they're relatively accessible for players, but fingers crossed, that is the risk. These cards are going to be very good in Modern and only printed in Modern Horizons, but really, apart from that concern, there's not much more you could ask for in a land cycle for Modern Horizons. Next on our list, we have Force number 3, Force of Despair, our black force, and this card is pretty unique. So 3 mana, instant speed in black. Similar to the other forces, if it's not your turn, you can exile a black card to cast it rather than paying the mana cost, and you destroy all creatures that entered the battlefield this turn. So on level 1, Force of Despair is kind of a instant speed removal spell. You leave it up, your opponent plays Tarmogoyf, you play Force of Despair, you essentially get a Doom Blade. So it's a fine removal spell, just in a vacuum. 3 mana to kill a creature, that's not bad. The timing restriction is a little bit strange. However, there is a ton of upside here. So the most obvious upside is you destroy all creatures that enter the battlefield this turn. So let's say, rather than a Tarmogoyf, your opponent went like Tarmogoyf, Death Shadow, for 3 mana, or for free by exiling a black card, you get rid of all of that stuff, which is an absurdly powerful deal, even in a format like Modern. More importantly, this card doesn't target. It doesn't target at all, which means maybe your opponent's playing Boggles, and you can't target Slippery Boggle. Maybe your opponent has an Emrakul that's about to haste in and annihilate you, and it can't be targeted by colored spells. Maybe your opponent casts Divines of the Vastwood or a Blossoming Defense on their Infect creature. Force of Despair doesn't care. It gets rid of all those things, even though they have some form of protection. So being able to not target the thing you're trying to kill and kill multiple things makes Force of Despair really exciting. It also gets rid of like Arclight Phoenixes, any number of them. Hasty Threats is another good reason to play Force of Despair. Your opponent casts all their spells, gets back all their Arclight Phoenix, goes for what they think is a lethal attack, and you're like, haha, exile a black card, see you later, Phoenixes. Yeah, they'll come back in the future, but still a great deal. And you could use Force of Despair like Slaughter Pact. Slaughter Pact, it's not that efficient. Like, yes, you gotta pay 3 mana the next turn. It doesn't hit black creatures, but really, you could get some amazing blowouts with a card like Slaughter Pact because people don't expect it. If you're tapped out, people are thinking, all right, I'm safe. I can attack you. I can throw these pump spells at my creature. Whatever. Force of Despair has a similar blowout factor, except even accelerated and even more so, where you are able to cast this when you're tapped out and your opponent won't be expecting it and potentially blow up a lot of their stuff by surprise. So I think Force of Despair is actually in the conversation for best force that we've seen so far. It might actually be better than Force of Negation in Modern. There are a lot of creature decks in Modern, playing efficient creatures, playing hasty creatures, Emrakuls that are attacking out of the blue, and Force of Despair gives you a super efficient answer to all of those things. Plus, more sweet Seb McKinnon art. So all around, I think Force of Despair going to be a very powerful card in the Modern format, and definitely in the running for best of the force cycle, with only 2 more forces to go. Next on our list, we got a fun one. Lightning Skeletalmancer, which probably should have just been called Ball Blightning, because that's essentially what it is. 3 mana, 6/1, trample, haste. When it deals combat damage to a player, they discard 2 cards, sacrifice it at the end of your turn. So Lightning Skeletalmancer is literally Ball Blightning. It is a Ball Lightning, except with a Rakdos mana, a black mana thrown into its mana cost, that also Blightnings, where you're able to make your opponent discard 2 cards when it hits. So this is potentially what you need to make Ball Lightning playable in Modern, I think. So Blightning is like close to being good enough for Modern, was great in Standard. Ball Lightning, also kind of close, maybe a little further than Blightning, but you combine those together, and the downside of a card like Lightning Skeletalmancer, or a card like Ball Lightning actually, that's salved by Lightning Skeletalmancer, is it only deals damage. It's kind of like a risky bird spell, essentially, where you play it, you get in damage. If your opponent doesn't have blockers, 6 damage for 3 mana is fine. If they have a blocker, they can soak up some of it, so it's risky, it goes away. But with Lightning Skeletalmancer, because you're making your opponent discard 2 cards, you're avoiding that inherent card disadvantage, part of a card like Ball Lightning. With Ball Lightning, you're basically trying to use it like a 6 damage burn spell. That's what it does. You spend a card, hopefully deal 6 damage if there's no blockers or removal spells. Lightning Skeletalmancer, if you hit your opponent for any amount of damage, you're making them discard 2 cards, so not only are you getting in that damage, maybe up to 6 damage, but you're actually coming out ahead in terms of cards too. It's a 2-for-1. You spend 1 card, your Skeletalmancer, to deal some damage and get 2 cards out of your opponent's hand. So I think this might be what makes a Ball Lightning card playable in Modern. So we've seen decks that could take advantage of it. Rakdos Burn using like Bump in the Nights or trying to reanimate Vexing Devils. Those are things that exist in Modern. They're not super popular, but Lightning Skeletalmancer could be a great addition to a deck like that. And if you want to go a little bit memey, nothing is more hilarious than like ramping into a Collected Company on turn 3, hitting 2 Lightning Skeletalmancers, and just wiping your opponent's hand, making you discard 4 cards and maybe taking up to 12 damage. So I really like this card, although, word of warning, there are still issues. It's a bird spell that can be blocked. So if your opponent has a massive Death Shadow on turn 2, your Lightning Skeletalmancer looking a little silly. Like, you play it can't really block because it sacrifices itself. It's not going to make your opponent discard because there's a blocker. So there are ways that this plan can go wrong, and there is some risk, but I really think that the upsides of Lightning Skeletalmancer, the Blightning effect added on to the Ball Lightning, might give this card a chance to actually show up in Modern, because, like I said, 2-for-1ing your opponent and getting in damage, way different than 0-for-1ing yourself, essentially, just discarding a card to deal damage because your Skeletalmancer or Ball Lightning goes away. So I think that it might actually have a shot, and is going to be super fun and goofy to try to play in Modern. Next up on our list, oh my goodness, they actually did it. Astral Drift, and this is one of those callback cards. Astral Drift, 3 mana enchantment. When you cycle it or cycle another card with on the battlefield, you get to exile a creature. If you do, return it to the battlefield under its owner control, beginning in the next end step. You can cycle it for 3 mana. This is basically a strictly better Astral Slide. I guess strictly better is not right, because Astral Slide triggers when your opponent cycles, so there are some very slight differences, but essentially, this is a very close to strict upgrade on Astral Slide, and Astral Slide is an amazingly fun card. It is just, oh my goodness, such a fun card to play with. So what you do with Astral Drift, just like Astral Slide, is play it with Enter the Battlefield triggers. There are decks back at Standard where Astral Slide was kind of a staple, and you get down your Astral Drift, then you play your Eternal Witnesses, you play your Flicker Wisps, your Wall of Omens, and then you just have a bunch of cycling cards. We got cycling lands now, we got a ton of cyclers, so you cycle these cards, maybe gain some life with Renewed Faith or whatever, and you cycle, get back your Eternal Witness to get back your Renewed Faith or whatever you cycled, so you can do it again. You cycle, you exile your Flicker Wisp, it comes back into play on your end step, you exile one of your opponent's lands so they're down a mana for the turn. You cycle, you flicker your Wall of Omens, it comes back into play, you draw another card, so it creates this like endless value engine, which can be really hard to beat. I do have some concerns about how it'll match up with the speed of Modern. Like Astral Drift and Astral Slide is a great deck at grinding out the late game. It is insane in those type of matchups and creates an almost unbeatable engine once it gets going. And you can also use it to save your creatures, which is really cute. Your opponent tries to kill your creature, you just cycle your Scattered Groves and exile it, and it comes back and you get to Enter the Battlefield trigger again. So it is super resilient and hard to beat if the game goes long. The question's gonna be, is Modern too fast to just play all these value creatures, play your enchantment, try to cycle your way to this grindy value? That's what we gotta wait and see. But I am incredibly excited for Astral Drift. Astral Slide was very high on my list of reprints I wanted most in Modern Horizons, just because it's like a perfect Panharmonicon card where you get so much value and so many Enter the Battlefield triggers. So it was really high on my list, and seeing a almost strictly better version, oh man, I'm really excited for this. And remember, this is kind of burying the upside where Astral Drift can cycle itself, which gives you an uncounterable way to flicker a creature. Your opponent goes to attack you. You can fog that attack essentially by flickering the creature. You can just cycle it to blink your Eternal Witness, your Wall of Omens, or save your Tarmogoyf from a removal spell, or your Siege Rhino for more drain triggers. So I am very hyped to build around Astral Drift in Modern. I don't know if it's going to be too slow to be competitive, but boy is it going to be fun to play, and I cannot wait. Next up, we have a sweet uncommon, actually. We have a bunch of interesting uncommons today. Munitions Expert gives us a 2-mana 1/1 flashy goblin that comes into play, deals damage to target creature equal to the number of goblins you control. This is basically like a Goblin Terminate. Works well with Goblin Matron, a removal goblin we can tutor up. The flash is really nice, maybe getting 2 for 1 value where you cast it and kill something, and you can maybe block and kill something, or at least chump block and save some damage. So we'll have to see. Red-black goblins, definitely going to have a chance. We'll see what other pieces of the puzzle come into play. It could show up in like 8-whack, could be a tokeny goblin deck where you're going wide with the 1/1s from Dragon Fodder stuff, but Munitions Expert definitely in the conversation as a really neat new addition to Goblin Tribal. Then we got a sweet zombie as well, an Undead Augur, a 2-mana 2/2 zombie that when it or another zombie dies, you draw a card and lose a life. So Undead Augur solves a big problem with the zombie deck. We've played zombies before, a couple of times, for like Budget Magic, other series, and one of the problems with zombies is they are weak in the 2-drop slot. They have good 1-drops, they have a ton of insane lords in the 3-drop slot, but in the 2-drop slot, apart from Relentless Dead, there's not a lot of great zombies. Undead Augur is absurd in the 2-drop slot. It gives you a resilient source of card advantage. It protects you against removal, it protects you against sweepers, so this suddenly jumps very high on the list of 2-drop zombies, and considering zombies, one of their biggest flaws was lacking a second good 2-drop after Relentless Dead, I think this is a card that makes you re-evaluate the zombie tribe in Modern. Like, just picture curves where you're able to like turn 1 Crypt Baker, turn 2 Undead Augur, Augur, turn 3 Lord, turn 4 Lord, get in a bunch of damage, draw cards with Crit Breaker, draw cards with Undead Augur, which is part of what makes zombies so sweet. They're a tribal deck that can get those tribal aggro wins, but also has the ability to go long with like recursive graveyard synergies and with weird card draw effects, and Undead Augur is absolutely perfect for what that deck's trying to do. So zombies, again, not saying it's going to be top tier, but this is a card that definitely causes you to like reevaluate the place of zombies in the modern meta, and I think it might actually be something that gives it a little boost in playability. We also got Diabolic Edict, which is kind of a weird one. So Diabolic Edict 2 months ago would have been a really exciting reprint. For some reason, which it still blows my mind to think about, we have not had 1 in a black instant speed target player sacks a creature in Modern in its history. We've had some variants like Guess Verdict is double black, or there's one that makes the creature's controller gain life equal to its power, like a Swords to Plowshare version, but we have just not had a straight up Diabolic Edict to kill Boggles or Hasty Emeralds. However, the problem is, then we had War of the Spark, and War of the Spark had basically a strictly better Diabolic Edict because it doesn't actually target, so it gets around like Leyline of Sanctity. So Diabolic Edict, it's still cool, but it's a little less exciting now than it would have been 2 months ago, because we kind of somehow went from 0 Diabolic Edicts to something that's strictly better than Diabolic Edict in the last like month of Magic time. So still a cool card, but I expect that 99.9% of decks, if they want this effect, are just going to play Liliana's Triumph instead of Diabolic Edict. There's not many reasons to play Diabolic Edict instead. I guess if you want to kill your own creature is the only upside, you can Diabolic Edict yourself, but that's such a weird fringe case that Liliana's Triumph is about as close as it gets to being strictly better than Diabolic Edict. So while it's cool to see it finally in Modern, it's nostalgic, it's iconic, it's just not as good as Liliana's Triumph. We also got an iconic common in Nimble Mongoose. So Nimble Mongoose is a card that has shown up in Legacy and been pretty good at various times in Legacy. A 1-mana 1/1 with Shroud, and some people get confused about Shroud. Picture Hexproof, except Hexproof for everyone. You can't target it, put equipment or auras on it or whatever, and then if you got 7 or more cards in your graveyard to have Threshold, it becomes a 3/3 for 1. So a pretty powerful effect, really, especially with fetch lands and other cheap ways to get cards in the graveyard. I think there's a question of how good will Nimble Mongoose be in the Modern format, and here I'm not 100% sure. The most common home for Nimble Mongoose in Legacy is sort of like Temur tempo decks alongside like Delver of Secrets, where you got Brainstorm and Dazes and so many cheap ways to not only fill your graveyard and churn through your deck, but also protect your creatures, and we're missing a lot of those pieces in the Modern format. The good news is it's really resilient. Shroud means it's not going to get hit by Lightning Bolt or Fatal Push or Path to Exile, so against control decks that don't have very many creatures, or even some combo decks that don't have many creatures, if you can get this into a 3/3 pretty quickly, it is a very reasonable, resilient threat. On the other hand, in Legacy, there's quite a few creature light decks, or decks that are trying to like reanimate, get one big creature on the battlefield. In Modern though, there's a lot of just like gum up the board with dorks decks, Death Shadows and Tarmogoyfs and Eldrazi and humans, and Nimble Mongoose, yeah, it can become a 3/3 for 1 eventually by like turn maybe 2 or 3 or 4, depending on how much your build around it and how your draw is, but it seems like it's going to get stonewalled a lot. Like, is a 3/3 Shroud for 1 really better than a 12/12 Death Shadow for 1 or a massive Tarmogoyf? So we'll have to see. I'm excited to see what happens with Nimble Mongoose. I'm not sure if it's actually going to be that playable in Modern, but because it has a track record in Legacy and is kind of an iconic card, I think people will probably at least try it and see how good it is. So it'll be interesting to see if Nimble Mongoose actually has what it takes to compete in a format like Modern. Finally, we got a bunch of just other lower rarity stuff. Fist of Flame's kind of an interesting pump spell. It cantrips and it pumps if you can cast a bunch of like Burning Inquiries and stuff, Faithless Lootings. It can give a creature a lot of plus some trampling. Abominable Treefolk, it's a snow creature. It's fun if you're playing a snow deck. It can be big if you're playing all snowlands, but not something I think that's really Modern playable. Exclude is a pauper counterspell essentially, and even though it's uncommon here, it has been a common, so it's legal in the format. I don't think just counter a creature at 3 mana, even with card draw, is going to be Modern good, but more copies for pauper is fine. Dismantling Blow, one of my favorite limited cards. Not really going to cut it, I wouldn't expect in Modern. Pondering Mage, a callback to Ponder on a 5-mana body. Maybe Pauper playable, but not really much Modern stuff. Great in limited, though. And then Lava Dart's kind of interesting. It's like a Gut Shot without Phyrexian mana, but you can flash it back by sacking a mountain. Maybe there's some argument to having it be like 2 spells for 1 mana with your Arclight Phoenixes, but I'm not sure it's actually going to be better than Gut Shot when it's all said and done, even though it's a sweet card. And those have been our daily Modern Horizons spoilers for today. So let me know what you think of all these new cards. What do you think about the canopies? How insane is it to have an entire enemy cycle of Horizon canopies? What's that going to do in Modern? How expensive are they going to be? What decks are you going to put them in? What about all the other stuff? What do you think about Lightning Skeletalmancer? Is Bulb Lightning going to be Modern playable? Force of Despair, where does that rank on our Force ranking? How about Astral Drift? Is Astral Slide with an upgrade good enough for Modern? Dismantling Blow, all the lower rarity stuff, Diabolic Edict exclude. Let me know about all those as well. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.